Netherlands.
You're a real Dutchman, like me.
I'm a real Dutchman, or a real Frisian, actually.
Frisian, wow, even better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I live in Amsterdam North. I got the tip for this evening from Danuta, and I think it's a very interesting topic, how to spend the quarantine time a bit better. So I'm looking forward to hear some more. I live in Amsterdam North, and I work for a company that makes electric cargo bikes.
Nice, very good. Thank you. And Sarah?
Hi, I'm from Turkey.
Very good.
And I work through a job agency. Normally it would be Horeca, but at the moment, because of Corona, it has been warehouses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Welcome, Sarah. Yeah, we're going. The next on my screen is Thijs. Maybe Thijs.
Yeah. Good evening. I'm a Dutch guy as well. So
nice.
As you probably guess from my name. So I have a background in government. So I used to work for the Ministry of Education and Science. So het ministerie van OCW. So I joined this group already some time ago, and I'm based now in Manchester in the UK because I have a new job here. So talking to you from Manchester.
Very international. Very good. Okay, thank you, Thijs. Diana?
I guess you're presenting yourselves.
Yeah, hello. Sorry.
I was a bit late, sorry. I'm from Spain and I go to Amsterdam to work there. So that's how I discovered the group in that church. But I'm now back in Spain.
Oh.
In an engineering office.
Very good. Thank you. So that's the upside of being able to do this online, that we have some international guests with us as well. Very good. Yeah, we haven't. I think not everybody's introduced themselves, but Don Rafa said that we should get started now, so maybe we should.
Some people are in a hurry. If we start now, we have all the time in the world. Let's start now.
Thank you very well, Father.
Yeah, we can't hear you very well, but
no, just go ahead and start.
Just go ahead and start. Okay, very good. So yeah, welcome everyone. Very nice that you can be here. This talk is called Freedom in Quarantine, after a book that has actually just, the paperback of which has just come out last week. So I'm just very proud to present to you this paperback edition of the book, which came out last week. The EPUB was already available a little bit longer. And it's very appropriate because I'm now in quarantine. So I could not come to you because last week I met someone with Corona. I'm not ill, so I'm fine. But I'm supposed to keep in quarantine, so I can put in practice all the stuff that I've been writing about. So which is amazing, great. Now, let me just give you say a few starting remarks before I've prepared something of a presentation which I'll share with you in a moment. I think it's interesting. So someone from the Onze-Lieve-Vrouwekerk invited me this weekend to a conference, an online conference on apologetics, and you could say that this book goes a little bit in that line. So it's a type of apologetics book, you could say, but in a way that is so apologetics means giving reasons for the faith, right? But in a way that is kind of in a very basic and starting level, because it's basically meant to to engage people in a conversation about things that are important for everyone. And what things, especially the question, who are we as human beings? And then to see what light can the Christian faith also add to what people think nowadays, and also what people have thought in the past. So it's like, and this is a road kind of trying to get to know a bit deeper what the faith contributes, which is very much recommended by the Second Vatican Council, where they've emphasized a lot that we should get to know ourselves as human beings better. So there's this apologetics part, and so that's one of the things you can keep in the back of your mind. So this book is the things I'm going to be talking about, maybe interesting to talk about also with people that are not religious, just to have a conversation about things that are important to us all. And then the idea is that you can also show what Christian religion has added to this understanding of ourselves, which is of course something very intimate to us. So that's one aim of the book of what we're going to be talking about today. A second aim is just that as human beings, I think we all want to understand ourselves better. And I think it's very interesting that we as Christians have a very privileged position, because in the end, Jesus Christ has come to earth to reveal God to us, but also to reveal ourselves to us. And so we get to know a lot more about ourselves. And today we're going to focus, on different aspects, but one that is central to the theme of the book is that of freedom. And if we understand freedom better, I think we can also live quarantine better, for instance. And that's of course a very actual theme. And this is why I chose this angle on the book. But it's so yeah. Let's see whether we can do something about that and help us understand each other a bit better. My idea is to present a few ideas to you. I'm going to present the core of the modern view of man, the classical view of man, and then the Christian view of man. And so if we and then we can see how we can how these three can combine. But I'm first going to present these three views to you, and then I'm going to ask you to think about that and see how that can help us now to realize these things. And then afterwards, after you have thought about that a little bit and we've discussed, I'll come back and kind of wrap it up and give you my view, take on the matter, which also is not dogmatic. So I mean, you can have other views, but yeah. So that's the idea for today. I'm gonna share a screen with you, but for those who are online, I will also share the presentation that I'm going to use in the chat. So you have that there. And now let me see. Shall I admit Alex? I think so, right? Hello, Alex. Okay, and now I can share the screen, which is this screen. Can you see?
Yes.
Okay, amazing. Let me see whether I can see you. Yes. Okay, good. So this is my presentation, and we have several. Wait, sorry, I'm going to change my setup. 1 second. This is not handy. Where now is my Zoom? Yes. Apologies. Yeah. Okay. Try again. Okay. Does it work again? Okay. So let's go. Oops. Let's go to the start. So what we're going to be talking about is three views of the human being, as I was saying, and we call these views roots. Now, yeah, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Daan van Schalkwijk. I wrote this book under my pen name, which is called, Daniel Bernardus, which are actually my first two baptismal names, because I think they are a little bit more international proof than Daan van Schalkwijk. But yeah, By training, I'm a theoretical biologist, and that's the combination of biology, mathematics, and philosophy. And well, as it's clear from this presentation, today is going to be mostly philosophy. But it may be a little bit funny to hear a biologist saying that human beings have roots. And yeah, so you shouldn't take that in the biological sense, of course, because we do move about and we're not that rooted like trees are. But in trees, roots give stability. They're kind of the basis of the tree. And so philosophers refer to the root to mean that without which a human being is not a human being. So what makes a human being a human being? So the core thing about being human. And we'll explore how different streams of thought see that human root. I'm following a text by a Spanish philosopher called Leonardo Polo, and what he has done is kind of synthesize, kind of get to these roots of the modern, the classical, and the Christian view. And I'm going to present his synthesis, which I think is quite brilliant and very insightful. Yeah, the plan for today I already said, so we're gonna I'll skip over this because I've already said that. Yeah, the main source is a text by Leonardo Polo called Lo Radical y la Libertad, which is, and I've published that in English translation as Freedom in Quarantine. There's also some elements from a novel which will be published in January called Win, 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 which I wrote with a Dutch economist together, which called Lans Bovenberg. And then there's some conversations with José Ignacio Murillo, who's my philosophy tutor at the University of Navarre. So these are the main sources for today's presentation. Yeah, and then I already gave you the Prezi link. So the three characters you see here are three main characters in the novel, Win, Win, Win. And they kind of, these three characters represent the three roots of the human being. So I'll just briefly introduce them, and I think they help to bring the ideas to life. So the first one is called Miriam, and Miriam is a student at a university college in the Netherlands. I teach at the university college, so that she's kind of a synthesis of a lot of students that I know. And she's a very smart person, but she's also quite anxious, and she's always, fretting about and very nervous about her future. What do I need to do? What career do I need to choose? Where do I need to go with my life? I don't know. And so she's always very, very nervous about that. And she really wants to show herself, to prove herself. Her mother is a banker, and her mother wants her to be successful. She also wants to be successful, but she rebels up against her mother a little bit and doesn't want to be a banker anymore. But still, she really wants to be successful, maybe in some other way. So Miriam stands for what we could call the modern root, the view of human beings in modern thought. And you could synthesize that as the result principle. What does that mean? It means that what is truly, truly important about human activity is the product of our activity. So a priori, so like before anything else, we are kind of empty. We still need, as human beings, we haven't made ourselves. We need to then kind of start to produce things in order to become truly human and truly valuable. So our value is in what we produce. That is kind of the view of a lot of modern thought. It's a little bit, a bit fast, but so why is this result principle? Why is that so important? Well, the modern thinkers have seen very, very clearly that the human being is able to produce things, to innovate, to create things. Creativity is very important. And we're being spoken of in this way as homo faber, a craftsman, a worker, or a producer. Now you can see that this is a way in which human beings really differ from animals. So animals don't produce. They live, and maybe some apes use some tools sometimes to open up an a hill or something, but they don't produce tools for the use of other animals, for instance. So to do that, you really need something special, and that does make us human beings special. Now, of course, in our times, we live in cities where nearly all of the world we live in is produced by human beings ourselves. So we live in a world that we've, to a large extent, produced ourselves. So this is, and this, it's also logical that we start to see the importance of products. And that is what's really happened in modern thought. Now, one key thing that I would like to give to you today is a kind of a view that the way we see human beings has consequences for a lot of things. And well, our religion also, but we're going to just start with very different things. I've just selected a few that are really important. So for instance, our view of knowledge is very importantly influenced by the way we see ourselves. So if for us, the most important thing about us is what we produce, then also the emphasis is on what we can measure, right? The results that we can measure. So in a modern time, natural science is the most characteristic form of knowledge production, because it's all about the things that we can measure, that we can experiment with, that we can do things with. I find it a bit strange, I'm a biologist, and as a biologist, you sometimes, at least in some areas, you have a kind of an aura of being a scientist, which to me is strange. So I, for instance, walked into the world of economics knowing nothing at all about economics, and everybody listened to me because I'm a biologist. And I'm like, what the, this is not right. I know nothing about economics. So, but the point is that natural science is kind of the core of the way we see knowledge nowadays. So it's a very important thing in modern knowledge. It also has a very big effect on how we see freedom. And this is the core topic of today, right? So our freedom, the modern view of freedom on the one hand draws on the idea that we are, to start out with, a priori, we are nothing. So we're not really determined in any way. So our freedom is also indeterminacy. There's nothing to guide our freedom, basically. So we are free from anything that determines us or limits us, especially also in our movements. So you could say that a big kind of symbol for our freedom nowadays is that of the airplane, which is what I put on the cover of the book as well. So this is the way modern people think of freedom. And this is, of course, what is being limited now. We don't have this freedom of movement. I cannot come to join you today, even though I would like to. And we cannot just fly all over the world. So, well, a little bit, but not too much. So kind of an external freedom, that is the very modern freedom. And that is, of course, what the pandemic is limiting, this type of freedom. This type of freedom is also called autonomy, being able to kind of decide for myself what I want to do, what I want to produce, the external things that I want to do. So this is a modern view of freedom. Then ethics. Ethics becomes consequentialist, because whether an action is good or bad depends on the consequences that action has. Against what we produce, what consequences our acts have. I'm going to go a bit fast. Motivation. This links up a lot to Miriam, because the results of what we do also become the most important source of motivation. Where do I want to go with my career? What do I want to reach? What sales targets do I want to reach? What grades do students get? All these kind of extrinsic things outside of us motivate us a lot. So these are extrinsic motivation. And then the mentality, because of that, you get a sense of unrest. Why? Because there's a lot of pressure to produce and demonstrate our worth. Because there's seemingly not a lot of worth in us to start out with. We need to really prove ourselves all the time. And that gets a lot of pressure on us. The thing is, of course, results don't only depend on the producer. Because, for instance, I may be a very good student, but if I apply to a certain kind of later university program and there is a lot of competition, I may be as good as I may be, but maybe there's not enough place and I don't get in. Or I may have produced a marvelous product, but because something changes and there's a pandemic, suddenly no one wants to buy it. That's not due to me. That's due to a lot of other circumstances. So okay, in part, of course, the results depend on us, but in part it doesn't. And that leads to a lot of uncertainty and unrest. So the mentality, typical modern mentality, is that of a lot of unrest. And that leads to anxiety, to depression, to a lot of things that we see in society today. Now, it's also good to know that modernity has entered into crisis, because these things I'm telling you now, I think, so I'm being a bit critical about it, and I think I'm not the only one. Because modern thought has entered into a crisis called postmodernity. And postmodernity expresses a mistrust towards modernity and abandons some of its projects. And why? Well, it emphasizes, modernity emphasizes the product, and for instance, doesn't think so much about the production process. And what you get then is a lot of complexity. So everybody's producing something, and well, except for in the results, there's a bit of a lack of unity and coordination. So, okay, there's competition that is some coordination, but there's no kind of idea that drives us all. So there's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of, nobody knows, well, we're doing a lot of stuff, but where's it all going? That's really a question no one can answer. And postmodernity therefore becomes really skeptical and says, why are we doing all this stuff? And just to give an example of the kind of complex problems that this leads to, we're having a big discussion at the moment at the college where I teach, Amsterdam University College, which is about diversity. So is AUC really diverse? And well, experience shows that we're actually mostly an expat community. So there's a lot of people from all over the place, but mostly are expats. So they're kind of from the same kind of culture. And one question we had is, why don't more Muslims come to AUC? Because AUC wants to be open to everyone, and a lot of Muslim students go to the VU. Well, I think one clear answer is that at AUC you need to live on campus in the dorms, and that's a mixed living situation. And I think that a lot of Muslims who take their faith seriously don't want to do that, so they don't want to go there and don't want to live in the dorms. But that's another value of the college. So we value diversity, but we also value that we're a residential college. So there's two values that just conflict with each other and there's no solution. So that's a typical problem that you get if there's no unified view of what we value. So we have different values, and sometimes these come into conflict and there's no solution. And that's a typical kind of perplexity that we face in our day and age. Okay, so that's very briefly about Miriam. Do you have any questions for kind of clarification of this modern view, or is it clear? We can kind of more discussion questions we can do later, but if there's any questions about clarification, please, I'm happy to take them. Clear? Yeah, okay. Then I'll continue. So I'll now introduce the classical route. So the way kind of philosophers in ancient Greece thought about the human being. And this is represented by another character called Claudio. Now, Claudio is a very different type of person than Miriam. He's not so anxious. He kind of takes it easy a bit more. And he likes to kind of sit back, relax, laugh with his friends, have a good time, but also think about deep questions in life. So he's a bit of a philosopher. He thinks about big questions, things that are important. But at the same time, he's able to relativize, and he's able to not take things too hard. And this stands for a big discovery which the Greeks made. And so this is a little bit philosophical. This is maybe the most difficult part of the whole talk. But the classical philosophers discovered the timeless, which means there's something in the world around us that is not subject to time. They call that actual. Things are actual. So if we think about now, what could be an example? Well, for instance, if we look at the world around us, we see that there are laws of nature. And if we wait till tomorrow, the laws of nature are not going to change, right? For instance, the speed of light, or if we say a constant like the speed of light, not because I wait till tomorrow, the speed of light is going to change. That's just going to remain the same. It's not subject to time. So the Greek philosophers discovered this. There are things in the world around us that always remain like the way they are. And that's really crazy to think about. Because also, not only are they in the world around us, but we ourselves have ideas inside of us, and those ideas are also not subject to time. If I wait till tomorrow, the number 1 is not suddenly going to change its concept. The concept is going to be the same. I can give it a different name. So I can call it één in Dutch, or uno in Spanish, or one in English, but the concept is the same. And so our ideas as such don't change from today to tomorrow. So they are outside of time. And that is something that if you think about it a lot, it's so revolutionary, because you understand suddenly that there's something in us that doesn't change all the time. So there's something stable. And yeah, okay, so I already said this. And that has, again, a lot of consequences. If you know that there's something stable inside of us and that our ideas are somehow stable. Of course, again, you can connect ideas to each other, and so the relationships can change. All that is true. But the idea as such doesn't change with time, right? Now, so in knowledge, the classical philosophers emphasized this timeless truth, and that gave birth to philosophy, which is the search for these timeless truths through reflection. And that realization that there are some of these timeless truths was actually the basis of our academic culture. Nowadays, of course, we are undermining that, because in postmodernism, people have started to deny truth at all. So it's only my truth and your truth and so on. But if that's true, then we can actually stop with academia, because there's no thing. We can also stop doing science. But clearly science has brought us a lot of good things, so maybe not everything is relative. So the Greek discovery, I think there's still a lot to it. Now, freedom is seen very, very differently than we see it today, because freedom was seen as the ability to live up to what we know to be good. Because the philosophers started to think, or say, if there are things that are always true, are there such truths about us, right? We'll get into that into a moment. And they discovered that, yes, there are some things that are always good for everyone. Now, nowadays, if you say that to people, that's something you're allowed to say. So if I say this to my colleagues at the college, and I try to do that, then they look at me very, very strange. So you're trying to impose your views on me. No, sorry. I'm recognizing that there are things that are good for every human being, right? And we'll see in a moment what those are. And the freedom. So freedom means that we are able to live up to those ideals. That was freedom for the classical human being, for the classical thinkers. Now, so ethics also becomes very different, because it is not very easy to live up to these ideals. And they have, so a slogan of the classical thinkers is, become what you naturally are. You already are human, but you have to still become it also. And to explain that a little bit more, I want to ask you a question. So this is the dilemma of Socrates, of course, one of the big philosophers. And the question is, what is worse, to commit an injustice or to suffer an injustice? So let me see a bit of a show of hands here. So who thinks that it is worse to commit an injustice? Okay, and who thinks it's worse to suffer an injustice?
Painful.
Yeah, okay, so we have, most people think the first, but there's a bit of a difference of opinion. Okay, it's not an easy question, but it's a very, very fundamental question, because the Socratic insight is, so Socrates would say it is worse to commit an injustice than to suffer an injustice. And why? Because that's the whole thing. Why would that be the case? Well, Socrates says, well, if you suffer an injustice, okay, something happens to you on the outside, right? So I mean, maybe something gets stolen of you, or you lose something. But if you commit an injustice, it's not something external that is changing, but it's something inside of you that is changing, because you are becoming unjust by doing an unjust act. So if I say I steal something, of course, I become richer maybe, but at the same time, I become a thief. And Socrates says, becoming a thief is much worse than be stolen from, because who I am changes. Now, I mean, this is something to think about. So I'm not, but I think it's an important point to reflect on. Well, we can talk about it a bit later. Now, so how do we become what we naturally are? Well, the Greeks understood that there's kind of feedback from our actions to who we are. So if we steal something, then we become thieves. Of course, we can also repent and then kind of reverse that process. But there's a feedback of what we do on who we are. And because the classics realize that, their ethics becomes what we call a virtue ethics. And we need to build habits that make us more fully human and do actions that kind of come back to us and make us more human, make us better humans. And that is kind of to live up to the ideal of being a flourishing, fully developed human being. Here's a painting from Jan Steen, who kind of in the Rijksmuseum, who describes the opposite, right? It's a painting with drunk people getting stolen from. So this is kind of a painting of vices. Well, it's the same idea, right? So if we do bad things, we become bad people. If we do good things, we become good people. So this idea, of course, had a lot of influence throughout history. So if we build character, that means that we are able to live up to a human ideal. So what are these ideals? So these are the ideals that the Greeks discovered and said, these things are good for everyone. This is good for every human being. And so there are theoretical ideals and practical ideals. The theoretical ideal is that of contemplation. We can contemplate truth. Of course, this is the idea of the philosophers, right? We can think about these ideas that are always and everywhere true. And that's something beautiful. We're able to kind of get into, as Plato said, this world of ideas that is always there. Well, I don't completely agree with Plato's view of that, but still, the idea is it's something beautiful, right? We can contemplate the theory and so on. That is, it's something that makes everyone happy. If you know how to do that makes you happy. But it can also be more practical. So that is, we can apply our reason to our practical life. And then if we do that and we make that our own, we have things like prudence, which means I can live according to practical reason. Or fortitude, which means if there's an obstacle to living according to that practical reason, I can overcome the obstacle. I have a strength there to overcome the obstacle. Or temperance, if something tries to get me off my path, push me off my path, or attract me off my path, then I can resist that retraction and still be according to reason. And justice means that I give other people what is their due. So I treat others according to reason. So all these things are the classical philosophers thought we can really live according to reason, and that is good for everyone. Now, I think if you really think about this carefully and think about it, at least my view is that this still holds. I think there's no one that's going to say, no, it's not good for a human being to be a better thinker, right? It's really bad for you to be a better thinker. So if we become more better thinkers and we apply that better to our lives, I think in the end, that's going to be good for everyone. Now, some last note on friendship, because according to Aristotle, you have different types of friendships. Friendships can be engaged in for usefulness or pleasure, but real friendships, according to Aristotle, help friendships that help each other to lead virtuous lives. So that help each other, friends help each other live up to these ideals. Okay, and then finally something about motivation. Because who we are is most important, improving ourselves becomes the key motivator. And that is what we call intrinsic motivation. So we are motivated by kind of improving ourselves inside of us. And that is, so for instance, if I'm a student, I want to study, not to get grades, but to learn something. That is why I want to learn. Or if I'm at work, then I want to work not only to get results for the company, for instance, but also to develop myself and to get experience, to become a better professional. That is what we call intrinsic motivation. Oh, sorry, there was one last thing, which is that of mentality, which is, the mentality is very different, because if you focus on actuality, the things that are always true, that leads to a certain quietness and certainty. So there's some timeless truth that we can strive to live up to, and we are actually capable of those truths. And living up to them may be a challenge, but it's also a clear target. So we can appreciate ourselves because we are already human beings, even if we don't always live up to our dignity fully. So there's a lot more quietness and certainty in classical mentalities, not so much unquiet and unresist in a modern world. Okay, so that, and Claudio again stands for that. Okay, I see that I'm running a little bit late, but I'm gonna still try and say something about the Christian root, because that's also important. And then I'm gonna try and see whether you can think about these things for a little bit. So Christian root is exemplarized by Patience. She is a lady from the immigrant community that we have in Amsterdam, of people from Ghana, and she's a Christian, and she is also she's a very good-hearted person. So she always wants to help out and so on. She's also a little bit soft, so she wants to help, but she's not. I mean, doesn't have a lot of oomph, right? And that kind of the oomph that Miriam has, she sometimes lacks a little bit. So she's not perfect, but she's very a good-hearted person. And this corresponds to, the core of what it means to be human according to Christian thought. And that is the notion of the person. There's something even more profound than just being human. And it doesn't abolish the things that the classical things were saying, but it digs deeper. Because we are able to go beyond ourselves and to give ourselves a destiny. We can always make a new start, and we can transcend ourselves. So we are created persons, and we are new created persons. So God creates us at conception, each and every one of us, with a newness that is completely radical. So we're radically new. We're completely new. And this is something that is very, very deeply Christian. Why? Because, we are loved by our Creator, and the Creator knows our names. You may know that the notion of the person was developed in the context of the theology of the Trinity, right? So one God in three persons. And the person there refers to the relationship between the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And so you see that the notion of person refers, on the one hand, to unicity, because the Father is unique, the Son is unique, and the Holy Spirit is unique, even though they're one. But also to relationship, because the Father and the Son don't exist without each other. They are intimately related in love. And so the human person refers to these same things. We are unique, but we're also intimately related. And again, this has a lot of consequences. For knowledge, so if we don't just do experiments, or we don't just think something abstract, we can believe someone because we trust that person. And so this is important in the relationship with God, right? Faith, I trust in God, but also in interpersonal relationships. If you're married, say, say a wife comes up to her husband and the wife says, "Oh, I love you so much," and the husband then says, "Oh, let me put you under a scanner to see whether it's true," then clearly something's going wrong there, right? So that is not what is happening there. And so we there is an interpersonal knowledge that comes with a relationship. So we trust each other. So personal knowledge is very important. Freedom, personal freedom refers to the capacity of giving ourselves a destiny, of destining ourselves. And that means, we encounter newness in other people. And we're always open to other people, to novelty. This especially happens in the context of an intimate relationship. So, for instance, a marriage, where the other person always keeps on surprising. If we love the other person, the relationship always keeps on developing, and there's always newness there. The notion of fidelity is therefore also very important to personal freedom, because this destining oneself must also be continued in time. And then there are the virtues are still taken on board in Christian thought, but there are some new virtues, those of faith, hope, and love, which keep the relationship with God and other people stable. And you could say, I mean, this is debatable, but one of the most characteristic virtues for this life is that of hope, because we are always open to growing more, of becoming more in relationship with others. So hope is a great, while we're on this earth, we can always grow, we can always improve our relationships, we can always also come back to God if something's gone wrong. So this is a very key virtue for nowadays, for our time here. For motivation, if we do something, we can also do it for others, and this is called transcendental or relational motivation. We can do it for God, but we can also do it for other people. I mean, if you produce mouth caps nowadays, you can say, well, I do that to make money, I do that to develop myself, but you can also say, well, I'm really doing something for society. I'm really helping people that need these things. So there's a relational motivation there. And that is typically Christian. And then the mentality, there's an importance of a loving compassion with other people. So that leads to a bit less stress than modern thought would bring about one's own future and results. But it can also mean a bit more pain or relational troubles and misfortune of others. So it's not just all roses. Now, in Christian thought, of course, this suffering also that relationships bring is understood to have a certain redemptive value, value for restoring the relationship with God if we unite it to the suffering of Christ on the cross. But okay, that's a whole different thing, but it's very important to understanding the Christian view of man. All right, this was my overview of the three views of man. So the modern, classical, and Christian. Do I need to clarify anything, or do you have any questions before I put you into ask you to discuss a little bit? No clarifying questions?
What do we have to do? Is that the question you would like us to discuss? Yeah.
So what I would like you to discuss briefly, so maybe take 5 to 10 minutes. How is each of these routes important according to you, well, for you, and especially in these times? So how in quarantine do these, if we have to be at home and so on, how do they become important? Yeah, maybe just take 5 minutes, and then we'll discuss also in 5 minutes.
Very good. Shall we use this and then maybe divide in groups in 2 groups or 3?
Well, maybe the people there can discuss, and I can put a breakout group for the others. Is that good or not? Oh, I don't have breakout groups, I see. Yeah, so maybe the online people can discuss and the offline people can discuss or something. Then I will. Is that good?
Yeah.
Shall we stay here in one group or?
Yeah. Okay. So if you turn off the sound of your computer, I'll turn off the.
I mute myself already.
Is the ones that we are online, we have to discuss, right?
Yes, please. I'll be with you if you don't mind. But you can. So what do you think? How can the three roots help us now?
I think I should get out of the modernity group. It's giving to me too much stress. I think I found a solution.
Really? So that is your experience the stress, right? Of the modern times.
Yeah, or at least I really recognize this fact that we should produce, and I think in this time you see, I think that's now a big conflict because it's difficult to produce now. So that's interesting.
Yeah, true.
It's true that now working at home, what at work can see it's the results, not the process. That's so it's difficult to produce, it's more difficult, but the only thing that the rest can see is the product.
Yeah, so in some way it seems to be more important towards the outside.
Yeah, in this time, I guess so.
Even more so because of social media and the way that everybody's using it more now, even more than we were doing it before the crisis.
Yeah. And so how does what do you link social media to most of the three roots, you would say?
Could you repeat that, because I didn't hear the last part.
So how do you relate social media to the three roots? You would say it's mostly the modern thing of producing.
I would say mostly the modern.
Yeah. How we present ourselves.
But
the modern, I think probably because of its characteristics, you're more interested in trying to prove yourself to everyone, and it's all about appearances more than your it's extrinsic instead of intrinsic.
Yeah. Okay.
But also, in this period, the people that has to work outside their homes, I guess it's more that Christian way, because the ones that have to be outside are the ones that provide everything for the rest. So it's this caring for the others.
Oh yeah.
Their work not mandatory. I mean, what they have to do, but in the end, is this care of the society.
Yeah. So especially the people working like in the front line of the pandemic and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what's maybe interesting there is that I felt a bit like people were almost like, due to the shock in the beginning, like everybody became compassionate with each other, and especially with the frontline people. But I was reading an interview with the frontline, some people in the front line in the hospitals, and now they are not getting anything anymore, like no chocolate, no ice cream, like nothing. So maybe people are now back more to the modern corner. I'm not sure if that's true, but it feels like it a bit to me. Like people are becoming less compassionate, more impatient with everything that's happening than they were in the beginning of the.
I think that I think you're right, but I think it depends which stage of the pandemic and where you are.
Could be. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
That's true.
Very good. What about the classical thing? Can we do anything with that in this situation?
I guess we have more time for ourselves, so we are not that much socializing, and and we can grow in ourselves, or at least be with ourselves.
Well, I think Jose, our colleague who's on, a friend of ours who's on, is a good example of that. He seems to have grown a lot spiritually, for example, in this time period.
Wow.
So I think what I try to, I use the quarantine period to get more into the less action and more contemplation in some way. So, and still I don't know, I think the mentality of the producing, it's hard. I don't know, I think each of us can relate that, even though, I don't know, so it depends on personalities, I guess, and some people are more into doing more, others are more into seeing things without needing to act, to producing. But in a way, I guess, what the paradigma of our society, in a way, you can tell that we want to produce, we have to-do list, we want to get things done, and that's how we feel in a way fulfilled. So I guess the revolution for us can be to realize that we don't know to, with just being, with just reflecting our own existence, just to be in silence, just to be with ourselves, which for me at the end is becoming prayer. So that's maybe the...
Yeah. Very good. So there's also something of an opportunity.
Yeah, for me, I saw it as an opportunity. Yeah, I think. For example, this Holy Week was really, really intense for me, and I was at home. I was not in a retreat. I was not in church, but I actually, with things happening online, time to be with myself, I find it really spiritual.
That's great. Okay, I think we're back. Would you like to share anything of what of the main points that came up during your discussion? Would someone like to share that, or?
Maybe with offline, from the offline group, we kind of saw some idea that came up was that in every person there's a bit of a modern, there's a bit of a classical, and there's a bit of a Christian. So it's like the Trinity, the three persons in one. And then we have to individually know how to juggle these three persons. And sometimes, maybe subconsciously, one of these three persons is dominant. And so if you're not an ambitious person, your modern person is being highly suppressed. And so it's, and then in terms with the pandemic going on, so where there's restrictions, you can't do this, you can't do that. Maybe it's your classical person that would help you, because it's a secure person, the classical person in my thoughts, would help you come up, and then a bit of the Christian person will give you hope to look towards the end of the pandemic.
So it's like a balancing act, you would say, like a juggling.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Would any of the online people like to summarize what we talked about, or do you want me to do it? Yeah, Jose?
No, I was you can do it.
Oh, okay. You're pointing at me.
No, it was if it's okay, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, we saw that in the on the one hand, sorry, I don't know whether I can. Please tell me if I forgot anything. But the main thing. So on the first hand, we saw, well, production is still very important in our times in the pandemic, and it also seems that at work people only see the things that we produce. So on the one hand, it seems that becomes more important. then on the other hand, we saw that that especially at the beginning of the pandemic, there was this idea of, you know, people working for others, especially on the front line, even though now it seems that the frontline workers get a lot less appreciation than they got in the beginning. So kind of the Christian idea of being there for others on the front line and others supporting them has become a bit less as the pandemic has gone on. And then we also said that it's also been an opportunity for kind of growing on the inside a little bit, taking time to be alone and kind of grow in also spiritually by kind of taking time to be by yourself, basically. Was that more or less it, or did I forget anything?
That's it.
Good job. Good summary.
Great. Okay, thanks. Let me just go back to my presentation one second. Yeah. Do you see it again?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let's see. Because now I would like to go over a little bit with you how could we bring these things together? Because as the first group was saying, so are these like three persons in us? Are they like three voices or somehow? Of course, I mean, I don't personally like very much being a split personality, so that, at least for me, would be a bit problematic. But of course, we all recognize, and I think that this is what you meant, is that, you know, these are all aspects of who we are, which are somehow relevant, and so they need to somehow come together. And yeah, the question is, how can that be? And I think it's right that that's a bit of a balancing act. But let's see, and this is what Polo tries to do in his text, is because, you know, each of these views, the modern view, the classical view, and the Christian view, each of the three are really truth claims. So they are claims of saying something, you know, what is the most fundamental about the human being. And it cannot be that they are all equally right. So they have to be wrong in something, because else they cannot be combined. Because they have some claim to exclusivity even, right? So it's actually, you know, thinking how these can combine is not so easy. And yeah, I'm not going to go into all the details here because that's too much. But for tonight, I'm just going to sketch the big lines. So from modernity, what should we take? Well, I think what Polo says is that we learn from modernity that production is a fundamental human endeavor for which freedom, creativity, and innovation are important. This is actually something that the Greeks didn't value. They didn't value production. They thought it was, well, you know, work is something for the less important people. The really important people just sit back, relax, and think about life. That's basically what they thought. And we now see that so production is actually much more than that. So there, you can really put a lot of yourself into what you produce, and there's something, there can be a lot in it, right? And that is a very important insight that modernity adds to the Greeks. So from classical thought, though, and this modernity has rejected this to a large extent, but we can still learn that human beings are capable of truths about themselves that are unchangeable, and that they are able to live up to these by building habits that help them become what they are. So I think we have forgotten about virtues in the modern times, and we are paying the price because we don't have the basis, kind of the stability that they give, that could actually help us to be more productive in the end also. Building habits, building virtues is actually a part of becoming a more complete human being. And from Christian thought, we learn that the human being is a person, a who, with a uniqueness and an inherent dignity, and that the person is able to transcend and self-destine ourselves into faithful relationships. Now, if we actually, I think what we need to say is that this is the most fundamental thing, not just because I'm a Christian, because we are Christians, but because the idea that we are persons actually can assume both the modern ideal and the classical ideal, because we can try to live up to the good out of love for God and out of love for other people. That is kind of assuming the classical ideal. And we can try to produce out of love for God and out of love for the other people. And this is assuming the modern ideal. So the Christian ideal kind of takes these and synthesizes them into a whole, and gives meaning to it, because the modern ideal is kind of meaningless. But if we do other things out of love, then they get meaning. And that is what the modern ideal is lacking. So how do we synthesize these? Well, knowledge, well, science is wonderful. And we should, you know, I'm a scientist and I want to remain a scientist. Science is great. But it cannot found itself. So this is a topic I skipped. It's a bit complex, but if you're interested in the book, there's more in it. Science cannot lay a foundation for itself. And science becomes especially meaningful when used to help other people. Of course, if I used to work at TNO and I saw that the group I worked at actually developed a quick test for Corona, that's great, right? So you can do something to really help society and help other people. So that is a great use of science. Then freedom. Freedom is not only freedom from impediments to produce, but also a freedom to, and a freedom to do several things. First of all, to become more human, like the classics said, but also the freedom to destine and give ourselves to other people, and to always be open to the newness of others. So a freedom to open ourselves. So these are very important ways of freedom. And of course, well, our external freedom has been limited in some time. I mean, I'm still able to kind of produce this lecture for you, so it's not completely limited. But also, but we might indeed take this as an opportunity to grow, as some people are saying, kind of grow interiorly during this pandemic. And this is a great exercise of freedom, and that's a great thing to realize. Now, in ethics, ethics should consider consequences, as the modern people said, but also norms and virtues. So these other aspects of ethics should also be integrated. Now, the danger here, and this is what I see a lot at the university. So there's ethics courses where people say, oh yeah, you have virtue ethics, you have consequentialist ethics, you have others ethics. And then they're kind of loose theories that you can pull out of the closet. Now, if you do like that, then anything you do, you can justify. Because at the right moment, you pull out of the closet the right theory, and boomba, you have your action is justified. Because there's always, you can always think of a theory that can justify your action. Now, of course, an ethics that can justify anything is not an ethics, because it doesn't give any guidance, right? So we need to integrate everything. We need to give an integrated whole and see that everything is aimed at the good of a human life. And this good, what does it exist in? In, first of all, as the classic said, being a flourishing human being, being able to reason, being able to live according to reason, but then also to commit to stable personal relationships, which also go deeper than reason, right? To really open ourselves to other people. And if we're able to do this, then we can have a real kind of integral ethics that has everything about it. I really love to write a bit more books about that in future, because I think it's a great theme, very necessary. And then we have motivation. Well, all of these motivation types are important. But as I was saying, the transcendental motivation is deeper and gives meaning to the other two. So if we do things for a love for God and other people, that gives meaning to the extrinsic things we do and to our self-development as well. So we can do that out of love for God and out of love for other people. And the mentality then, well, if we synthesize the three, the importance of results will always lead to some degree of unrest, because results, well, they are uncertain, and we're not going to take that away, and they remain important. Of course, we're not going to say we're going to forget about results now. But there's a balance in the fact that there are some truths that give stability and resilience. So if we build virtues, we become more resilient to things that go wrong, because we know, okay, at least we've acted according to reason, right? So you can say a lot of things, but I've done my best. I've tried to, and I know that I've acted reasonably. So if things go wrong, okay, well, so be it, right? And that gives resilience. And then personal relationships can give both comfort, because sometimes we go through a difficult time and we get comfort from others, but also we can also have to invest in them, of course, and pass through a difficult time in the relationship. Again, there, if we have a virtuous character, that can help build resilience, also in personal relationships. So here the three again come together in a very and give balance. So wrapping up, in times of quarantine, our external freedom to produce and to do things has been limited somehow, but our freedom to build good, healthy habits hasn't decreased, even though the habits may be a little bit different than before. And our ability to build strong personal relationships, even though it's also, of course, a little bit impacted because, of course, we cannot see people in person as much, and that does influence, but we are still able to build strong personal relationships. And so in daily life, we can pay a bit, maybe try and pay a bit more attention to the classical route. What important questions could we reflect about? We can think, what important books could help us? Maybe we can read some classical philosophy that can help it. Maybe we can just think about, how can I be a better version of me? How can I maybe use my time better? How can I be more loving to the people in my house, around me? And maybe also, so personal relationships don't happen by themselves. And what can we do to kind of reach out to others? I'm a tutor. I'm at AUC, which means an academic advisor. And preparing this talk, I've come to the concrete resolution that I need to reach out more to my techies, because it's not as easy, right? So normally you just come across them in the hallway and you say hello and you talk. But now, if you don't reach out, nothing happens. So we maybe need to be a bit more proactive there. But it's still possible. I think also, more than doing things, the situation calls also for appreciation of the freedoms we do have. And then again, if we appreciate the fact that we are free to develop relationships and to develop ourselves, that may also go together with new ways of thinking about many issues. Now, if you would like to know a bit more about this presentation was a little bit quick, but there's a lot more depth to this whole argument. This is the book. It's called Freedom in Quarantine. So Leonardo Polo is the main author because he wrote the main text. I wrote a quite extensive introduction, like I've done now. You can see it. So I've started an author website, danielbernardus.com. There, I can also send you, if you like, a free mini course on the meanings of success. So the things that we've been talking about, how does that reflect in our thinking about success? So yeah, very welcome to have a look. And just for me, I think I hope you agree that these themes are quite interesting and give a lot to think about. And so I've been trying to explore them in different ways. And one is through this novel, Win-Win-Win, kind of try to express pedagogically these roots, how they go together in a story through these different characters. Then there's going to be a booklet on economics and love to explore the dynamics of human relationships from an economical angle, together with the economist I've been working with. And then another one is the spirit of art. So how can we see the changing views of human beings in art? And I think all these kind of are different angles that help us to appreciate the importance of these things we've been talking about from different ways. And they kind of, because these are so kind of fundamental things, you always kind of get new lights and new things if you go at it from a different angle. So that's why I'm trying to do that. So yeah, if you're interested in these things, just on danielbernardus.com, you'll see these things appearing as we go on. Yeah, for now, really thanks a lot for your attention. I hope this has been useful for you. And if there's any further questions, I'd be really happy to take them. Thank you.
Daan the philosopher. Okay, very good.
Yes. Do you have any questions or other things we could continue talking about?
I think you gave us a lot of stuff to think about. Yeah. And if you can send us the link to the summary that you spoke about, I think that we will read that.
I would definitely. I think I would just use all the resources you.
Yeah. So I put in the chat. I put the prezi, so there you can go over the presentation I did today. And if you would like to, so at danielbernards.com, I have this mini course. These are like 3 videos in which I explain some of the things. Well, there's some overlap with what we did today. It comes back, but I also explain it with references to films. And in the video, you can just, they're like 5 to 10 minute videos. So they're three 5 to 10 minute videos. And there you can kind of at your own pace go over these things again and think about them. And then of course there's the book, which is a little bit more elaborate, and you can kind of take it easy and reflect about these things further.
We have recorded the session. I will send you the link to be able to watch it again if you wish.
Okay.
Recording of the links. Thank you very much, Dan.
I'm curious, how did you came across this idea?
Of this book.
Yeah, and it's curious because from this idea of different routes, you did different ways to look at it. So how did the main idea came to you?
Well, I wanted to study philosophy, and so they put me in touch with José Ignacio Murillo, who's a professor of the University of Navarre. He sent me this text of Leonardo Polo, which I've translated here, also already some years ago. And he uses this text in university education of philosophy students. And because he has found it the text that has most inspired students. So students came to him after the studies and said, you know, of all the stuff we've read, this text is the one that's most helped me. So it's really something that is kind of proven its worth. So he sent me the text and he said, read this and see what you think. And I read it and I said, Bamba, wow, this is great. This is really very profound and it helps me a lot. So since that time, I have already started kind of incorporating elements from the text into my own teaching. And I've been working on it and thinking about it. And so, well, the direct, we were organizing a conference on philosophical anthropology, and I thought I was going to present this text because I thought this is interesting for a lot of people. But then the conference got canceled because of Corona. So I said, okay, now what am I going to do? So we decided to translate it to English, and then so I kind of used the time that I had left because I wasn't organizing the conference to write the book, to write the introduction, and yeah, that's how it came to be.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And best regards to everybody there back home. Let's see who is online.
Okay. For me, I have a last question.
Yes, please.
For me, the concept that I think you touch a bit indirectly, and for me, it's also been going a lot into it during these last months. Yeah. Is the interior freedom. Yeah. You know the book of Jacques Philippe that talks about it, and I read the diary of an Amsterdammer of Etty Hillesum, and I was really touched about realizing what is this concept of interior freedom and how it's based in a way to find the kingdom of God in yourself, and what's the reaction of this girl in some way finding it in such a tremendous times, no, like the Second World War in Amsterdam, and how things are going super wrong, and I find it especially inspiring during the quarantine, because also it's a similar situation. The world seems to be upside down, and yeah, it's a way of seeing what we can do, no, to deal with this terrible, because in a way it's like it's a bit what you were saying about the external and internal of the classics, no? That actually this is for me this extreme example of your interior life can make everything around you still looks like this is heaven and this is we are loved by God and we are into and
yeah, very good point. I read Philippe, but a long time ago actually, so I'd like to reread him now that I've I've done all this work.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly you could say that the theme of this talk has been interior freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And so the nuance maybe that you can take from today, I think, in this notion, is that there are really two types of interior freedom, and they are complementary. One is the freedom of our reason, and the fact that we can use the quiet time to really think about what is good, and that is already, that's the classical view, is really something very, very rich. So if you read, when I was this is a bit of a strange story from my life, but when I was a 14-year-old boy, I used to sing in a church choir in my native town called Daan, and there was a lady who was the kind of the choir mother, and I don't know why, but she gave me a book of Plato to read. So she gave a 14-year-old boy a book of Plato. Now, of course, I didn't understand hardly anything of what was said in that book, but I understood that there was a guy, so there's Socrates, they're all dialogues, right? So the dialogues of Socrates talking to someone, and Socrates makes life difficult because he's always looking for truth, kind of relentlessly, right? He's asking and asking and asking, and everybody thinks that they know something, but he's asking and asking and asking. In the end, they have to conclude, well, okay, maybe we didn't know so much in the end. But so that he's relentlessly looking for truth. And that, for me, that was so inspiring because it's, the truth is there and it's very beautiful. Though I have to say here that there's a quote from Pope Francis, which I like a lot, which is, the truth is it's like a pearl. And a pearl is very beautiful. If you put it in someone's hand, it's very, very beautiful to look at and say, oh, admire it. Oh, look how beautiful the truth is. But if you slap it in someone's face, then it's quite painful. So that's a very, so the truth is something we have to deal with very carefully. So on the one hand, we need to be, I think it's very beautiful to look for it and to search for it. But on the other hand, we need to be kind of careful with it and not get over, how do you say, fanatic about it or something. So there's a love for truth which is not fanatic, which is great. So that is one type of interior freedom, being able to look for truth and really trying to delve into that deeper. I think the freedom, the interior freedom that Jacques-Philippe is talking about more, if I know him a bit, is you could say more the personal freedom or the spiritual freedom or the freedom of the interior life, the freedom of the life with God, the freedom of the intimate relationship with God. And this is something where I've been finding, also through these studies, that sometimes being too rational can even get in the way. So in our relationship with God, it's very good to work according to reason, but we also have a heart, and we can discover God in our heart in a very different way than we can discover him in our mind. We can discover God in our minds. Don't get me wrong. Our minds are very important, but we also have an intimacy that is beyond our reason, deeper than our reason. You could say our personal intimacy, where God is present in a very, very special way. And this is a second area where we can live interior freedom. I was watching
I think that we have to
tie. Okay.
finish.
I'm trying to listen.
Some you have to
Everything is in the middle of the face.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. So I hope I don't say any. I was looking at a talk today by Christopher West, who talks about the theology of the body, and his main message was, so he's a very interesting guy. His main message was that God wants to marry us, and this is so kind of in a spiritual sense, and this is something it seems to me that is deeper than only reason, right? So there's something profound in us where we can kind of open our hearts to God, let Him in, and there, very wonderful things can happen. And well, of course, the big mystics, Saint John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, and so on. These people have written about these experiences, and it's something. It's a big world out there. In here, actually, big world in here. Yeah. That's still open to be explored, which is really wonderful. So these are two senses of interior freedom, and I think they're both really, really important.
Yeah. Thanks.
Do you have any personal tip for a classical book that's good in this quarantine time?
A classical book. Yeah, I have many. Well, depends. Yeah, depends on what. Tell me what you're looking for.
How to get a bit more out of the modernity and more into the classical space, or the Christian.
Into the classical space. Well, the classical, if you mean by classical, like ancient Greece, the book I would most recommend, I suppose, is well, it's. Are you used to reading philosophy or not really?
A little bit.
Try the ethics, Nicomachean Ethics of Aristotle.
Okay.
That's like the summum of Greek ethical thinking, and it's beautiful, but it's not easy. Yeah. So then you also have one book that has become a bestseller actually during quarantine, during the lockdown, is the book of Viktor Frankl, which is Man's Search for Meaning. You know that, I suppose.
Yeah.
I love that book. It's very intense, of course, but it's just about his things in a concentration camp and his experiences in a concentration camp. But the logotherapy he gets out of it is also very much in this direction, I think.
Okay, thanks.
And of course, my modest contribution, but
exactly.
Okay. Very good. Well, I think Father Ojeda would like us to.
From Madrid. Do you have any questions or? No. Well, thank you very much, Daan.
Well, thank you to you.
And if you have other topics that you prepare a bit later, please feel free, as you did this time, to suggest. And I think we'll be glad to hear something else.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the open invitation, and I'll probably send something your way in the future.
And,
Thanks.
You are all at home, but we have here our
Bye.